Hey, this is Daniel Posney, your host for Self Mastery Soup and Shifting Perspectives. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that's pretty important right now. And I guess it's always important. It's just coming up really strong, at least in my life. How can we heal and integrate by looking at what is played out in the world? So, what I mean by this is that to be in the world, but not of the world, means that I'm existing in the world, but I'm not. I'm not in reactive mode to the world, and I can kind of see how the world is playing out. I can see what's going on in the world, the energies, the consciousness of the world, and I have sort of a watcher or an observer perspective on this. When I'm in and of the world takes me over, and I'm in victim consciousness sometimes, and it just kind of overtakes me, and I'm just doing the best I can to stay afloat. So when people go through some kind of spiritual awakening or enlightenment or some kind of more leaning into a spiritual life, you have to take account of how you feel about the world. So that's the collective, what I would say, the collective consciousness is the sort of the general feeling and awareness and energy of the world. So if the world is in fear and they're getting ready to go to war and there's a big virus in the world and people are struggling to make sense of it, then what my work is to see how I react to that, see how I respond to what the collective world outside of my being, outside of my local consciousness, how it feels about that. And if I go into more fear about that, then I'm kind of wrap myself into the collective, and that's just doesn't work out so great. So what I like to do is to look at how the world is playing itself out, what's going on in the outside world, and not get so wrapped up into what certain energies want me to be wrapped. What seem to they want me to be wrapped in. They want me to be really concerned about election fraud. They want to be go into fear about dying from a virus. They want me to think this way or that way about a vaccination. There's all these different, they want me to worry that when the year 2000 comes up, that I should be concerned about that, when I need to stock up on water and food and all these things. And it's so easy to get wrapped up into that, because there's an aspect of myself that is always trying its best to survive. That's my identity. That's my egoic mind. That's this separate self from the world, from the universe. So what I like to do is find out what is going on in the world right now, and what is the energy, not the details, but what is the energy of what's being played out right now. And if you're this is not dependent on what side you're on. So let's take the current events, virus and vaccination. Let's take your opinion and your view and your position about any of that stuff. Let's take it to the side for just a moment. I promise you can come right back to it. But just for a moment, look at what's being played out. Look at the energies and the emotional stuff that's being played out. And you might come right forward and say, yeah, but this emotion is that people are killing each other, or they're not getting vaccinated, so they're killing each other, or they're getting vaccinated, they're killing each other. It's like, for one thing, whatever view that you have so firmly on this side can be so also firmly expressed on the other side. I hear both sides saying, you got to listen to the doctors, you got to listen to the scientists, you got to listen to the research. And on the other side, they're saying the exact same thing. It's such a trip. So let's pull back from this, what could be this never-ending struggle for right, wrong, good and bad. This is the way that everybody should think. Let's pull back and say, okay, what's going on here? So first of all, what's going on here is division and separation. At least we can agree on that. Let's even just be honest with it. There are certain entities, there are certain always existing entities in the world that want us to be divisive and separate. That's why in some of the movies that you've seen over the years, there's always, there's this theme of let's pit these people against these people, and they'll kill each other and we won't have to worry about them. I'm sure it's been played out in indigenous cultures where the colonizing people have come in and pitted these people against each other so they would kind of take care of the problem. And that's sort of what I feel is happening sometimes, is that there's these opposing views that have been created, sometimes out of thin air, sometimes out of valid concerns. But there's been these um, fuelers that have kind of fueled the fire of the divisive nature of the argument. And we find ourselves going, God, it's like me when I've been in a relationship and I've been in this argument with my partner, and I've forgotten what we've been arguing about. And I just know that I need to be right. And that's just the egoic nature. And that's what I think what happens sometimes in these big arguments, election fraud, virus, vaccine, and so on, that we can get lost in just being right, and we can lose sight of what's actually happening. What is the energy behind it? So division and separation, two big ones that are happening right now. People are being separated into at least two or more camps. And the other big one is happening on both sides is guilt and shame. You should feel guilty if you don't do this, and shame on you if you do, all that kind of stuff. It's really on both sides. There's been that played out. And obligation is another one, that there's this big obligation that you should do for your community, or we're all in this together. And there's some truth to all of it. But let's come away from the details of the play that's being played out right now. Get away from the details of what the mind wants to stick into, and pull back and go, hold on a second, hold on, before you launch into a full all-out war. What is the energy? What is the emotion that's being expressed here? That's kind of the go-to point on any kind of healing and integration of emotional trauma. What is the emotion that's being played out? The other thing that's being played out on top of division, separation, guilt, shame, obligation is boundaries. And there's some things, there's some ideas that have been, there's some actual physical things that have been played out in different countries like Canada and Australia and France, different parts of Europe, that like there is no boundaries, that the controlling, what am I thinking about? Controlling entities, some police, some government, not all, but there are some out there that are really like aggressively attacking people. And talk about not having any boundaries. And so let's take apart this idea that they are right and the other people are wrong. You may feel that the police are doing the right thing to suppress these people and to put them in place. They're causing great harm. And you may feel the complete opposite. Let's take that out of the picture. There are boundaries. This is a boundary issue also, that, people are crossing boundaries, that people should be able to express themselves. And yet the people come in and just completely walking right over and trampling out over the boundaries. That's a big one. The other big thing that's happening right now is this big fear of death. And I know that we've always had a fear of death, this healthy fear of death, and it helps make life precious. And yet there's this thing that's sort of being played out of, I will do whatever it takes to make me create the feeling of safety. And I will say yes to whatever if they say it's going to give me this feeling of safety. And that's a huge thing right now, that we don't even want to look at this idea that, I'm smoking a pack a day, or I'm drinking a bottle of wine every night, and yet I will put something in my body that hasn't been fully tested. So that's one view of that, is that we discount what we're already doing to our bodies that should make us feel a fear of death, what we're already doing to ourselves, and yet we'll kind of block that out and not even look at that. So those things. So again, try your best to not let your mind take over and say, Daniel, you're on this side or you're on that side. Take apart the details of what you think is happening and stay in the emotion of that. That's where, that's when we get to our greatest healing. And when we stay in the details of the physical thing that's happening, we keep ourselves in the loop of what's been plaguing us all this time. So if we're really honest with yourself, we all have these emotional traumatic themes in our life. for me, guilt and obligation, and it's being played out. And if you want to stay in that, just stay in the argument of that, then I don't know why you're on this video. But if you do want to really heal that from the source, from the cause of it, then you'll look at what is the emotion I'm feeling? How am I reacting emotionally to what's being played out? So for you, it might be something different, but it seems like the collectively what's happening is division, separation, guilt and shame, obligation, boundaries, and the fear of death. So if that's part of what you're also feeling in your reaction, you could have the same reaction if you're on this camp or on this camp. There's a fear of something, people are crossing your boundaries or threatening your boundaries of safety. Look at what's being played out, not the details. I know I'm really hitting really hard on this whole concept, but I don't know how many times I can say this. So I want to talk about death. I don't really have a problem with talking about death, and I love what people have said about it. So I want to share with you some quotes that I found about death. Let's see. I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens. That's from Woody Allen. Jimi Hendrix said, I'm the one that's got to die when it's time for me to die. So let me live my life the way I want to live. That's from Jimi Hendrix. Mark Twain, the fear of death follows from the fear of life. A man who lives fully is prepared to die at any time. He also said, I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions of years before I was born and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience from it. J.K. Rowling, to the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. E.E. Cummings said, unbeing dead isn't being alive. Then that means trying not to die is not actually living, same kind of way. Victor Hugo, it is nothing to die. It is frightful not to live. Here's another quote that I found. I found myself thinking about President William McKinley, the third American president to be assassinated. He lived for several days after he was shot. And towards the end, his wife started crying and screaming, I want to go too, I want to go too. And with his last measure of strength, McKinley turned to her and spoke his last words. We are all going. And then Helen Keller says, death is no more than passing from one room to another, but there's a difference for me, because in that other room, I shall be able to see. Anais Nin, I hope I'm saying that right. People living deeply have no fear of death. Marcus Aurelius says, it is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. And then, of course, my favorite movie, David Mitchell says, I believe death is only a door. One closes and another opens. If I were to imagine heaven, I would imagine a door opening and he would be waiting for me there. So I love those ideas, and I choose to live a fully expressed life, and that's why that anything that stands in the way of that, then I'm going to choose something else. And I invite you to, however, whatever your stance is to be so firm inside yourself that you cannot be swayed with argument, and nor should you want to engage in argument because you're so firm in that. And whether that's from your own research or just even your feeling, just your own feeling is validation enough. You don't have to have research that backs you up. If you feel so strongly and that this is something that the greatest hurricane cannot sway, then that is the thing that feels so good. And that's how I feel about my own position about all kind of things of life, is that when I feel into it, this feels so, see, my guidance is about, does it feel loving? Does it feel like love and not fear? Does it feel expansive and not contractive? Does it feel like being more expressed? Yeah, there might be some fear in that because I got to more fully express myself and engage in things maybe I haven't tried before. But is it moving towards that? That's kind of been my gauge. It hasn't always been that way, but that's just something that I decided to, well, it all came from this decision that I made that I'm here to love. I'm here to fully express myself. and I'm not here to be in resistance to living and to loving. And I will not step another step on this planet without fully expressing the truth of who I am and not what my mind says. So, there's this idea of that love can be about keeping yourself and your community safe. Well, that there can also be this program of the mind that's going to try and manipulate that. So if we think about fully expressed love, unconditional love, unity consciousness, that is allowing all beings to have their own way, to have their own opinion, and yes, the dark and the light. So that's what I want to live my life in. And anything that starts to move away from that, I get to just firmly stand in my center and say, no, thank you. So let's see. See how the world wants your vulnerable sensitivities of the mind to obligate your energy. Let me say that again. See how the world wants your vulnerable sensitivities of the mind to obligate your energy. It wants to pull you in a certain direction. It is not the most important thing for the world to go your way. Yeah, that's a big one. What is true for you right here, right now, in your space, in your reality, right here, right now? What is true right now? Not what your past was, not what your fear of the future is. What if this all happens? What is true right now? And that one really kind of, if you're looking for something that helps you come out of worry and anxiety and fear, that's the one that really helps. And again, my tool for that is to take 2 fingers and tap the top of my heart. Tap, 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 and say in my mind, I am, I am, I am. Because to me, that is the only thing that I can truly rely on. That is the only thing that is permanent. That is the only thing that is true. That is the only thing that I ever will be and ever have been. Anything on top of that is just ideas of my mind, of my thoughts. And those are all temporary. So that's what really helps me to stay in that. Even if I have such a firm position on something that I know to be true, I can get really passionate about that. And I still, even in my passion of my own truth and what feels really good and expansive to me, still, I need to check that and balance that out with this I am meditation, this I am exercise. So that's what I got for this. I know we could talk about this for hours and hours on end, but I just want to give you something just to kind of plant the seed and hold firm on your position. Not here to sway you in different ways, but hold something that feels really, really exciting and good to you and really loving and expressive to you. And I guarantee you that your life will reflect that. Thank you. I love you. Bless you. See you next time.